And we are recording. All right. So, anybody who was here last week, welcome back. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. This is Talking Average Fitness Podcast. This is episode number 2. And as always, it is my pleasure to introduce the fittest ginger that I know, Mr. Kevin McCarthy. I, of course, am Sam Burns. Kevin, how are you this afternoon? Afternoon. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, bud?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. I appreciate you asking. Um, and without further ado, we are going to kind of kick into our topic for this week. So we spent a little bit of time talking about ourselves last week, and now we're going to kind of venture into the meat and potatoes, the things that you and I have been talking about for forever.
Yep.
Um, and a great place to start is kind of the state of CrossFit. Like, where are we? What does it look like? Kind of like a State of the Union address,
hmm
right? And so every time I think of the State of the Union, I think of the West Wing. Certainly, at least the first 4 seasons. Which, if you haven't watched, do yourself a favor, watch it. Um, and the State of the Union is good or bad, or like in a word, what would you say the state of CrossFit is?
Ooh. Mm. Evolving. I think that's the
Okay.
the word I would use to kind of describe the state of CrossFit, whether that like the evolution that's happening is right or wrong. I think
Sure.
there's just a lot more like I think you're just seeing like an evolution in the programming, the implementation, I'll say, of the CrossFit methodology. And again, whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know, but I think it's an interesting topic of discussion, which I'm sure we will discuss today. Um,
Yeah.
if you had to describe the state of CrossFit in a word, um, where would you go?
Well, now I'm thinking about the word evolving. Um,
Uh, there's a lot in
you
that.
know, yeah, there is. There's a lot in that, and I'm sure we'll dig into that. If I had to give it a word, I'd still say good. CrossFit
Mhm,
works. CrossFit
mhm,
changes people's lives. And you know, now as we're seeing, 20 years into the experiment, there's a lot of different ways that people can experience CrossFit.
mhm.
Um, but I think that overall, like by and large, the people who are CrossFit trainers and the people who are operating affiliates, like they want to create positive experiences for people. So I'd say the state of CrossFit is good,
Yeah,
but
I
you're
would agree.
absolutely right. It's evolving as well.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely is.
it so we say it's evolving, right? So we should probably establish like if you were to walk into a CrossFit affiliate today, like probably not
Mhm,
likely that whoever is listening doesn't do CrossFit, or at least less likely.
right.
Let's imagine you're a brand new client, a brand new athlete. You're going to walk into a CrossFit affiliate.
Mhm,
What are some things that someone might experience, in different places, in different ways?
yep, yep. I think that kind of the first thing that you're going to kind of experience if you're someone that's new, you're hopping into CrossFit, it's your first time, you look up on the affiliate finder map, where's the closest affiliate towards me or near me, find it, go visit it, especially if you go in and visit kind of like during a class, it's the 4:30 class and you show up at like 4:45 to kind of check in or check it out. It might seem, especially if all you've experienced is kind of your quote unquote normal um, kind of fitness atmosphere, thinking of like, a Planet Fitness or a Gold's Gym where everyone's kind of got their headphones in, head down, they're kind of doing their own thing.
Yep.
If you walk into a CrossFit gym, it's probably going to seem like a little bit of chaos. Um, just because you got people moving around, there's music going, there are no machines. It's just barbells and dumbbells and plates and kettlebells, kind of not all over the place, but depending on how the room is set up, it can kind of look like all over the place. They're just kind of stuff out on the floor. And so if you're not used to that, that's probably going to be the first thing that kind of kicks into your mind or seems, you know, a big difference from a CrossFit affiliate from kind
Yeah,
of your normal Globo gym atmosphere.
for sure.
Um, so that'll probably be the first thing that you would encounter is that slight difference in atmosphere. Absolutely. Um, so that'd probably be the first thing, or that's what I think would be the first thing that you'd experience. Um,
And and that's important to talk about. Like CrossFit has set itself apart from traditional fitness modalities, especially like no
Hmm.
machines. Um, and if you're not used to the concept of functional fitness, just being exposed to something like that can be, a huge paradigm shift. Um, and it's weird to like walk into an empty warehouse where it's
Yep.
just mostly open space and, a couple racks with barbells and a couple shelves with dumbbells. Like that's weird. Um, so let's fast forward then. So a person walks in,
Hmm.
they aren't frightened by what they see or experience. They go, they
Yep.
sign up. Maybe they get through, some on-ramp sessions. There's a lot of ways that that can be
Hmm.
done. Now they're coming into classes, right?
Yep.
Let's assume we have a standard regular CrossFit class. It's not a specialty
Yep.
class or anything like that.
Yep.
60 minutes front to back. Um, this is where we start to see some differences in how the CrossFit methodology is applied at the affiliate to affiliate level.
Yep.
Um, and I know that like what I see done at some affiliates is different from what I was exposed to, is different
Hmm.
from, what happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago. What might people experience when they walk into an affiliate they're there for a class today?
Hmm. Um, so I mean that's really a loaded question because there's a whole spectrum of what you might experience when you step in. You're like, all right, first
For
CrossFit
sure.
class, let's get it. Um, I would say I'd like, if we're taking kind of like whether it's like a step back or kind of like uh, answer your question with another question is if you are the person running that affiliate, you know, what's your goal for that new member? Someone comes in, they're here for their free trial class, their first class. What
Yeah.
is the first thing that you should do
Mm.
as the coach? What would you say? What would be the new member comes into your class or a new person like, hey, first time ever doing CrossFit, no idea what I'm doing, but
Right.
I'm here for it.
Right.
What's your first step? What's the first thing that kind of you would try and ensure that they experience?
So the first thing that I do,
Hmm.
someone walks into my class, I get a drop in, I get a person who brings up a friend or a buddy, never done CrossFit before.
Yep.
Um, First of all, I establish, is that the case, right? Like, have you ever done anything like CrossFit or have you been to a CrossFit affiliate?
Hmm.
And let's assume the answer is no. The first thing that I do is I tell them, okay, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you,
Yep.
right? And I say immediately, like, first of all, it establishes that like this is not some kind of free for all where people just go like come in and do whatever they want. Like I'm gonna be the person who you bring your questions to, you bring your concerns to,
Hmm.
and it's important that I build that bridge of trust with that athlete as quickly as possible. And the very
Yep.
next thing I ask after that is, you know, do you have any injuries or range of motion issues? I run down the list:
Yep.
shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, wrists, all of those things,
Yep.
and kind of start to get a feeling for kind of where they are in their body
Hmm.
currently and vis-a-vis that, like what might have been their previous fitness experience, even if they haven't done
Yep.
anything with CrossFit. So I get a picture of them as a human being and what they're capable of in a very general, basic sense. And everything after that for me
Hmm.
is me doing my job as a professional and making sure that I deliver on that promise of I'm going to take care of you.
Yep. I like that. I like that. I think that, when someone new comes in, first step, and I think the way that exactly how you've outlined it is definitely a really good way of doing this, is first things first, someone first walks in your door, make sure they feel welcome. If regardless of who they are, their walk of life, the whole thing, someone walks through your door, your job is to help them. And for them to want your help, they need to feel welcome within the four walls of your gym.
Sure.
So I think the way that you've said that is exactly right, is making sure they understand like, hey, I am here to help you. I am going to take care of you, not only through this class, but hopefully for all the classes of the time that you're with us. Um, and then I take a very similar approach. Do we have any sort of like, uh, not just like background in CrossFit? Do you have any experience or knowledge of CrossFit prior to today? Um, and if not, do you have any fitness or sports background prior to today? And if they were like, oh yeah, because this could be a whole thing is, um, I either never played sports, never did anything active. This is the first step in the thing. Okay, that's a whole kind of situation scenario to go in. And then you
Yeah.
have on the other side of the spectrum is like, yep, I was the All-American football player 10 years ago.
Yes.
That's a whole nother thing as well that comes with its own risks and
Hmm.
uh, all that as well. So
Hmm.
getting somewhat of a background, but then like you said, following through on that promise of making sure to check in with them
Yeah.
during class, making sure that you get them squared away and
Yeah.
in whatever the class workout is.
Yeah. And I, you know, obviously we're talking about, you know, whether they were a previous athlete or not, anyone who's new to CrossFit, it's
Mhm.
our responsibility as responsible trainers to,
Yep.
do exactly what we're talking about. And
Yep.
then it feels like, once we've established that, like, okay, we have an understanding of who this person is, um, what happens after that and what this person experiences.
Mhm.
Of course, there are differences kind of coach to coach, and that because each coach is an individual and that is its own
Mhm.
thing. Nowadays in CrossFit,
Mhm.
kind of setting aside the affiliate differences and stuff like that, what tends to happen at the affiliate level is there are a couple of different flavors of experience, I feel like,
Yep.
nowadays, right?
Mhm.
Um, a great example would be, some affiliates, they kick off, so the coach introduces the workout. Hey, this is what we're doing today. And then written right on the board is a warm up. And all right, everybody go get after the warm up.
Mhm.
And the warm up is whatever it is. Maybe it's 5 or 10 minutes, something like that. And then the coach brings everybody back and it says, cool. The next thing is we're going to back squat for the next 10 minutes. Um, Bars are over there and racks are right there. Make sure the rack is set at such and such height. Go ahead, grab a barbell. Give me a couple back squats and then start adding weight. And maybe that lasts 10 to 15 minutes.
Yep.
And then the coach brings everybody back in, and they're like, "Cool. The next bit we're gonna do is this thing, and it's um, kettlebell swings and box jump overs and rowing," which
Yep.
sounds awful.
Yeah. That sounds. Oh,
I don't care what rep
yeah.
scheme is involved.
It
I hate
doesn't
my
matter.
brain.
Doesn't. Yeah. Doesn't matter the weight of the kettlebell. That it doesn't matter.
Right? And so there's let's call it
Yep.
AMRAP 50, AMRAP 20 is
Yep.
probably more like it in this case. AMRAP
Yep.
20, some combination of things.
Yep.
And so you're doing those things until the 5 minute mark left in class.
Mhm.
Cool. Everybody stretch it out, wipe things down. Great job. Right.
Mhm. Yep.
And I think what we just described is a really common experience
Yep.
for a lot of
It's
people and a lot of affiliates.
Yeah, very very common. I mean, that was me at the affiliate that I coached at in Maine until myself and the owner got our level twos, and we were like, ooh,
Mm,
like we're kind of missing the boat here. Like that was the deal. I was just there to observe and make sure no one died.
yeah.
There was a warm up written on the board. Whoever the coach was that opened the gym,
Yeah.
wrote a warm up on the board. If we'll use the class you just described. Warm up is 3 rounds, 200-meter jog,
Hmm.
30 seconds in the bottom of a squat,
Yep.
and then 15 barbell good mornings. You go through 3 rounds of that. You have 10 minutes, off you go, guys. Cool.
Yep.
And then I'm sitting here like eating a protein bar and drinking a coffee and
Yep.
whatever else, just chatting with people around the room. All right, guys, now we got the next 15 to 20 minutes to
Mhm.
go through your back squat. We're doing 5x5 today. You're just going to build up something challenging. And normally it had a percentage, which, that's a whole nother topic of percentages or not
For
for
sure.
lifting.
For sure.
But hey guys, we're doing our 5x5 back squat at 75% today. So take 5 minutes to load up 75% and then rock and roll, but you have until the 20-minute mark to do that. Fantastic, guys. Barbells and plates back away. We're now doing our disgusting triplet of rowing and kettlebell swings and box jump overs. 3, 2, 1, go. Fantastic. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. And
Yeah.
that was the extent of it. And you know, it was just a not necessarily like a lack of awareness, but more just like a lack of development of like just having someone there to kind of teach how to properly implement those
Mhm.
things. And so I think that really is a kind of average CrossFit experience inside an affiliate for most people in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to outline for people who are not trainers.
Hmm.
So we've just described a scenario where, and let's like kind of set a couple boundaries so we can kind of paint this a little bit clearer picture for anybody who's
Hmm.
listening or watching.
Yep.
So as you're going through the warm up, you feel like you are confident that the coach is actually paying attention, right? So they're not just scrolling Instagram in the corner or something like that. They're there, they're interacting with people, they're asking
Hmm.
questions, there's jokes, people are laughing, it's a good
Hmm.
time.
Yep.
And then they um, describe what they want to happen with the back squat. They might even demo a movement or two, right?
Hmm.
And so make sure that like, hey everybody, this is what our back squat looks like, and 70% should feel like X, right?
Hmm.
And they kick you off into that, and then there's triplet, hinge-a-palooza
Hmm.
of, here's what a box jump looks like, and here's what rowing looks like, and maybe you even get a chance to practice with all
Hmm.
of these things, right? Just to make
Yep.
sure that you've got the right kettlebell weight and blah blah blah. And they kick you off into your AMRAP 20, and it goes great. It's sweat fest, and you finish, and it was a fun class. The coach was
Hmm.
engaging. Um, you got a good sweat. You got to hang out with some of your friends.
Yep.
The
Got a
situation
good
we've
lift.
described, right?
Yep.
Like it's not
Yeah.
a bad class,
Nope. Nope.
right?
You can take that class structure and you can do it decently well.
For sure.
Like it, you can do that decently well. Like if you're, as you said, if the coach is kind of engaging, you're, showing some movements, you're giving some time for warming up, not only the back squat, but then like you said, in an ideal world, they'll be like, hey guys, we're gonna go through, like, if the workout is, say, 20 of everything, it's 20-calorie row, 20 kettlebell swings, 20 box jump overs for 20 minutes. Um, horrible. But
Now I want to do
let's
it.
just let's just say that's the workout.
Yeah.
Is, hey guys, you're gonna go through, you know, one round of 10, 10, and 10
Yep.
with a lighter kettlebell and a shorter box, and then you're gonna go through another round of 5, 5, and 5 with a heavier kettlebell and your workout height
Mhm.
box, and
Mhm.
that's kind of like your warm up rounds. Like that would be an ideal way in that scenario to kind of implement that. So I
Yep.
think it can be done well for sure,
Yep.
as long as people are engaged throughout
Yeah.
and it's a
I
well thought
and
out plan.
Well, and yeah, is there a play? Let's hope there's a plan. And it seems like
Mm-hmm.
there's, you're describing some progressions so that people get a chance to be exposed to a movement at a light load before they move up to a game weight or a workout load.
Yep.
Um, cool. I think what let's make a blanket statement, and this is where we
Okay.
might start to piss some people off, and I'm comfortable
Oh,
doing that because
I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
cool.
I'm ready to be ruthless.
So like that could be considered your classic strength in a Metcon model,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yep.
is the most popular model for implementing CrossFit, certainly in North America currently,
I
right?
say yep.
Yeah.
Currently is. Yep.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
kind of what do we mean when I say that? I mean, there's some kind of warm up, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lift of some sort, and
Mm-hmm.
then on the heels of that, there is a uh, typically somewhere between a 15 and 20 plus minute workout that is a
Mm-hmm.
couplet or triplet, maybe four movement chipper or something like that. When we say Metcon, for anyone who doesn't know, but that's a shortening of the phrase metabolic conditioning. It's
Mm-hmm.
a it's a catch-all phrase for a high heart rate, very aerobic, very metabolic kind of workout, and then you close things out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very popular for a lot of reasons. Um, It is also not what you and I were exposed to
Nope.
in in our
Nope.
upbringing as trainers.
I was gonna
It's
say, what question for you is like, why do you think that format is so popular, Sam?
oh God. So here's
Let's see how ruthless you want to be. I
yeah,
have my answer.
let's kick the hornet's nest. So
Yeah.
there's a conception I believe about um, there is this very well intentioned notion, I believe, that affiliate owners or GMs or head coaches need to provide maximum value
Mm-hmm.
for athletes who are inside of their gym for those 60 seconds, or pardon me, 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be forgiven for thinking that 5 to 7 days a week of strength, a lift, and a Metcon is giving them more for their dollar, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Um,
I think
and
one,
go ahead.
sorry, I was gonna say, I think one thing to like just kind of clarify is like if you're an affiliate or a coach who does this, you
Mhm.
implement CrossFit this way,
Yep,
we still love you.
absolutely.
I'm sure it's well intentioned. It's not with, you know, any intention of a disservice to your
No,
members. That's
no.
for sure. Like that's not the intention by any means. We still love you. I'm sure you're a great person. You are making change in people's lives. So just want to like throw that out there
Yeah.
as we go ahead and talk through this.
And some of the most well-known brands in the
Hmm.
CrossFit space, that have transitioned from just affiliates into entire movements or brands, they
Hmm.
utilize this model. They do it very successfully. Their coaches are very good at it.
Hmm.
The reason we're having this discussion is because we're trying to highlight what people might experience is different today from what it might have been previously, right?
Hmm.
And so I think this model is popular for several reasons. One is the bang for the buck thing.
Hmm.
The other thing is, as you are trying to, so like say I own an affiliate, I'm running 7 classes a day.
Hmm.
I don't want to be the guy who runs 7 classes a day, 5 days a week, because then I'm going to be crazy burned out. Like I want to bring on trainers.
Hmm.
Um, it is a no joke thing to develop trainers and to invest both time and funding into a path that allows them to go from I only was a member to I now understand how to stand in front of a group of people and get them to do what I want, right? I think the path from member to trainer is shorter in a strength and a metcon model
Hmm.
because the benchmarks for delivering value are much lower. And I say that because let's create a contrasting scenario for
Okay.
for this strength and a metcon example that we've
Yep.
laid out, right?
Yep.
Um, so the contrasting scenario is swing hard to the other side. It's going to be Fran. Right?
Hmm.
You walk into an affiliate, and written on the board is the word Fran in quotes,
Hmm.
and then
Yep.
21:15:9 thrusters and pull-ups, and in parentheses 95:65. Right? That's the only thing on
Yep.
the board. There's no warm up or anything like that,
Yep. That's it.
and it's the whole shebang. And for those of you who don't know or haven't done Fran, Fran is famous in the CrossFit world for a reason. It's a CrossFit benchmark workout for a reason.
Yep.
Um, and so you've got 45 reps of a barbell thruster, which is a full squat, stand, press to overhead, prescribed weight, so intended to be executed at 95-pound total weight barbell for men, 65-pound total weight barbell for women, and then pull-ups. So 21, 21, 15, 15, 9, 9. What do you think the target time domain to hit the stimulus
Hmm.
for the workout, Fran? What would you say that target time domain is?
Ooh. So ruthless me says sub five. Um, if I'm being like,
Yeah.
honest, I mean, Fran is a sprint. It's meant to be done at warp speed with
Mm-hmm.
zero regard for your personal well-being. Um,
Yes.
and so it's meant to be done that fast and that
Yeah.
aggressively. And the reason that that can happen is because your thrust and pull up are what we like to call complementary movements, in that you have a, overall like pressing movement. Squat would be a lower body push, and then a
Mm-hmm.
press overhead would be an upper body push, and then an upper body pull. So they're not interfering with one another from like a muscular standpoint. So it
Mm-hmm.
really invites the intensity being able to go back and forth between the two because neither movement interferes with the other.
Yeah.
That's why Fran is such a devastating workout.
Right.
And for it to be done properly, like it should be a sprint.
Yes.
And so I would say that the goal would be to try and get people into that kind of like sub 5 minute range
Yep.
that would be an ideal, in for me. Now when it comes to running that class in an affiliate, if we're being kind of realistic,
Mm-hmm.
there is a little bit of kind of some oopsie. Someone puts a little bit more weight on their bar, or they maybe bite off a bit more than they can chew on the pull up. They maybe go a little bit over that 5 minute range. I would say if we could land most people between 4 and 7 minutes
Sure.
would be a well executed Fran for a class.
I think that's a really well thought out, being mindful of the intended stimulus and what's going on. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a very reasonable thing to say. So now let's come back to that 60-minute time frame, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm going to spend 3 minutes at the front end talking about the
Yep.
workout, describing a
Yep.
thruster and a pull-up and what this thing should feel like. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
spend 4 minutes there, right?
Oh,
And on the
getting
back
wild.
end, I give myself like a lot of time. I'll give myself 7 minutes
Yep.
on the back end to
Yep.
stretch people out, pick bodies up off the floor, etc.
Yeah, scrape people up off the floor, the whole thing.
Exactly.
Roll around, just question life choices.
So then right off of that 7 minutes is the
Yep.
7 minutes that is Fran.
Right. Yep.
Okay. There's another
Yep.
3 minutes for a bathroom break,
Yep.
right? Because everyone's got to do that. So now I've
Yep.
described a situation where in a 60-minute class, I have 7 minutes of pick yourself up, 7 minutes of work, 3 minutes of talk, 3 minutes of pee. That's
Yep. So we're
20
20
minutes.
minutes. Yep.
What are you going to do as a trainer
Yep.
with that 40 minutes that's left over?
Let's chuck a 7x3 front squat in that bitch. Let's
Why
go.
not?
Why not? I mean, we got 40 minutes. It's so much time.
So that's if you have not been, for trainers, if
Yep.
you have not been brought up in an environment where you haven't been conditioned just to create a safe environment in which fitness can happen, but instead you as the trainer are going to be the person who delivers the value. You're going to, for example, you're going to write the whole warm up. Let's say you're be really generous. It's a 10-minute warm up. You're going to get people pretty sweaty, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you're
Yep.
at the 13-minute mark. From the
Yep.
13-minute mark to the 40-minute mark, or no, back up from that. No, I had it right. 13-minute mark to
Yeah.
the 43-minute
Like
mark.
43. Yep. There
Yeah,
you go. Yep.
you're
Just 3s
gonna
on the front.
you're gonna it's another 30 minutes or
30
something like
minutes.
that,
Yeah.
20 minutes. You're
Yeah.
gonna do what you need to do in order to make sure that people are taken care of and know how to properly execute this movement that is the thruster, and are
Mm-hmm.
taken care of and know how to properly execute some iteration of this
Mm-hmm.
movement that is the pull-up,
Yep.
bearing in mind the gnarly, non-conflicting, sprint-esque feel that is Fran, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so from the 13-minute mark for the next 30 minutes, like even 30 minutes to coach two movements, that can be terrifying.
Yep.
There's
It's a
no
lot
place to
on you as
hide,
the trainer. Yep. It's a
right?
lot on you as the trainer. If you don't know how to like properly progress. I mean, it's one thing to be like, this a thruster, squat, press, do 10. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, that took 30 seconds.
maybe.
But maybe I squat really fast, took 27 seconds.
There you go.
But that's where we come back to that notion of providing value. It's
Mm,
no longer on the programming to
mhm,
provide that value.
mhm,
It's on you as the coach, as the trainer, to provide that value. So where my mind goes, like, okay, first of all, we're gonna like kind of warm the movement up and the muscle groups. So we're gonna get you on a bar. We're gonna get the bar overhead.
mhm,
We're gonna get you below parallel and kind of like
mhm.
make everything feel super buttery and smooth.
Think of major
And as
joints.
far as yep, think
Yep.
major joints, warming up all the movement patterns that you are required for this. So we're gonna go through some pressing, some squatting, both loaded and unloaded. Make sure everything's good to go there. As you're going through, the way you provide value
Mhm,
to your members in a class like that is
mhm,
like not only going through maybe a teaching progression for the thruster for anyone that is that newer athlete that comes in, they're like, I don't know what Fran is or what a thruster is. Like, all right, cool. We're going to teach you what the thruster is by going through some of a movement progression. And that movement progression not only teaches the movement, but it also acts as like a little built-in warm-up as well. Even if
absolutely.
you're someone who's like, I've been doing CrossFit for 10 years, moving through a movement progression is also acts as what we like to call your specific warm-up,
Mhm,
your warm-up for that thruster. Here's where the providing value comes in as well to those members who might know what a thruster is what can I give them as like a movement efficiency thing,
mhm.
something specific to that movement that's going to help them execute the workout really well.
And not just specific to that movement, but specific
Yep.
to that individual.
Right.
Yes.
So Like, and that's where the trick is of providing that value. Um, so yeah, it's if you go through like a proper, you know,
Mhm.
specific warm up or kind of teaching progression for the thruster,
Yeah.
and then get them moving through the thruster, focusing on those kind of points of performance that you'd like,
Mhm.
movement efficiency things, stuff to think about when it comes to the thruster. Um, that's how you can, that half an hour that you have to teach two movements, it's like
Yeah.
you can, if you really dive in, you can get that done for sure.
Absolutely. For sure. And I mean, obviously you and I we're speaking from one end of the spectrum. We've got
Mm-hmm,
experience. We were trained as trainers how to execute in this particular thing.
mm-hmm,
Again, that's not everybody's experience. Um,
right.
and this is part of why I think. So now let's turn this to like a business owner standpoint, right? Or like a
Mm-hmm,
GM. I'm a
yep.
GM. It costs
Mm-hmm,
me X amount of dollars every single class that I'm going to run.
yep.
And I've got to have a person, I've got to have a trainer who not just wants to be here and wants to run these classes, but if they're going to do what you and I have described in this Fran class, they have to want to improve. They have to be,
Mm-hmm,
um, they want to dig in and understand not just, how to keep someone safe, but how to take someone from a beginner level to an intermediate level uh, movement practitioner or the thruster, and then from a beginner to
mm-hmm,
an advanced, and
mm-hmm,
understand at different levels, what does a beginner need to focus on, what does an intermediate need to focus on, what does an advanced need to focus on, and then it gets even more complicated when you start talking about gymnastics,
yep.
where
Oh my
now we're going to
gosh.
now we're going to do it for the pull up. Let's not go down that rabbit hole, but just know that
That's, yep.
despite the fact that we're dealing with not only our body weight and an external load, about
Mm-hmm,
99% of all CrossFit trainers are far more comfortable teaching weightlifting than they are gymnastics.
way more.
Yes.
And the reason why is because you can control the tempo and the pace. You can hold people in a position, like squat down. Like you can hold the bottom of a front squat, and then from there, it's like, okay, it's really easy to see in a static position what needs to be fixed, what needs to happen in that movement. Whereas it's really, really, really hard to tell someone to pause somewhere during a pull up to make
Yeah.
sure that their hips are maybe in the right spot, or like that timing of the kip
Yeah.
is happening properly. That's a really difficult thing to do, um,
Well, and,
in your gymnastics teaching for sure.
well, as I like to say very often when talking to other trainers, it's weightlifting is one skill with infinite loads, right?
Yep.
And gymnastics is one load with
Yep.
many different
Infinite
iterations of
skills.
that
Yep.
skills. Exactly.
Yep.
So
Yep.
let's kind of step back from all of that. We've now just established that like I'm asking more of that trainer as the
Yep.
affiliate owner or GM to run that class. You
Mm-hmm.
can assume then that the person who's able to capitalize and deliver that value, they require more training. They're
Mm-hmm.
probably more valuable, which means it costs me more. And
Mm-hmm.
there's very often a relationship where, for those of you who don't know, one of the biggest line items on any affiliate owner's balance sheet is payroll, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, of course, there's toilet paper and heating and cooling and electricity and internet and
Yep.
Spotify subscriptions and all that stuff, but it's payroll, paying to
Yep.
have people in classes to run these classes. And if I'm an affiliate owner and you know, my bottom line can be directly affected by how much because like it's if I have the same number of memberships, I have 100 members in my gym, and it
Mm-hmm.
costs me twice as much to run my classes because of
Yep.
just how the structure of the class is.
Yep.
It gets really hard for affiliate owners to say, "Oh,
It's
well, yeah,
super hard.
I see the benefit um, to providing that value, quote unquote." And it gets really, really muddy about like, okay, well, if I'm going to implement the Fran style workout versus the strength and a Metcon, like, is it
Mm-hmm.
really better? Like, and and I think that kind of sums up a lot of what might be happening in a lot of affiliates, certainly in North America. I'm
Yeah.
going to venture to
Mm-hmm.
guess, like elsewhere in the world as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got basically two camps, and there are some slight variations here and there, but
Mhm.
we've gotten to this point where CrossFit has, again, strength and metcon being the most popular model you might experience, it's moved away from just the original model, the original intention,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Um, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? So go back to to use your word, it's an evolution,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
kind of going backwards now in time, right? So we've established what you might experience if you walk into an affiliate today. Let's go
Mhm.
backwards in time. And neither of us were CrossFitting in 2002 under Coach Glassman,
Nope.
but
Nope.
but there's enough written about it, and there's enough written about the methodology, and it makes pretty clear like what the goals and what the aims are. So
Mhm.
take us back in time. Like
Mhm.
what might we have experienced? And hopefully, if there are any OG CrossFitters, God, we apologize if we get this wrong. And please tell us if we got it wrong.
Yeah, yeah. If you were back, like say between like 2002 and 2005, where like between you're doing probably about 1,000 pull-ups a week. That's kind of it's kind of a joke, but kind of not. If you go back into like the analogs of like the archives of CrossFit.com and the
Mhm.
workouts as they go through, they did a lot of pull-ups. But I think kind of I mean, again, CrossFit kind of evolved a little bit. If you go way back to 2002, it started off as CrossFit was definitely a bit more segmented than it is now. If we
Mhm.
think like segment in the sense of like, hey, we're going to like, there's your warm up, but then you're maybe going to do like a lift and then some like rowing intervals,
Mhm.
or you're going to do like a metcon and then some like accessory stuff.
Mhm.
It
Some
was a
skill
bit more
work of some
set.
kind.
Yeah, some, yep. Um, so it was a bit more segmented originally, but I think when CrossFit really started to come into its own was, we're seeing a really balanced across the board. And when we say across the board, like just across time, and like pick any amount of time, a week, a month, a year,
Yes.
you're seeing a really balanced um, application of mixed modal workouts,
Mhm.
um, of varying time domains and rep ranges. You're having, the emergence of the true heavy day,
Yep.
and then you have your kind of like your longer workouts where,
Mhm.
okay, today we're focusing purely on just aerobic conditioning development.
Mhm.
Think more your monostructural movements, your rowing, running, biking, skiing,
For
all
sure.
that fun stuff.
Yep.
um, so I think that's where, when CrossFit, as they started to refine some things, like that was the initial expression of CrossFit as a methodology, was true variance across all modal domains.
Mhm.
um, and just that, what we come to know as the WOD, the workout of the day, where it's just here's your one effort for the day, and we're going to try and maximize that.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you who don't speak trainer, when we talk about modal modalities or mixed modal, think about couplets and triplets, right? So
Yep.
Fran is mixed modal, that's weightlifting and gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
Helen is mixed modal, that's weightlifting and a monostructural, which is your classic cardio, and then also a
Mm-hmm.
gymnastics component as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I agree, and I think part of that comes out of the fact that like, yeah, and CrossFit makes no bones about this. Their aims were to optimize human performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they started with this theory, and it was a guess. It was a
Mm-hmm.
the phrase I want to use here.
I mean,
It
we
was a
phrased it
like
last
a
time as like it was just a live experiment.
well, it
It
ended
was
up being a
like
live experiment,
yeah,
but it was a hypothesis. That's
yeah,
the word I wanted. It's a
yeah.
hypothesis
It started off
that
as a hypothesis, and
right that there was
mm-hmm.
um, a level of physical adaptation that would lend itself generally well to any pursuit,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the theory. And this is early 2000, had not been proven, right? And so what they
Mm-hmm.
did is they came up with some models. Those of you who know your level one manual, we're talking about the metabolic pathways. We're talking about the
Yep,
hopper. We're talking,
yep. The
there's
10 general physical skills.
10 general physical skills, and especially the
Yep,
10 general physical skills.
yep,
And then later came things like the fitness, wellness, sickness continuum. Um,
yep.
So in this experiment, as it started to really settle into its own, they're recording data, and they use the internet for it. So we're going to put it up,
Hmm.
see what people come back with. And they
Yeah.
collect the information and say, well, that's interesting. And then they put up a new version, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and I love the way that, you describe it. It's like, yeah, that was like when we think about like single workout of the day, like I
Hmm.
think that's what a lot of people think about, assuming you've been exposed to something like that before. Um, and yes, of course, there were dedicated weightlifting lists. Of course, you were, going long. Every once in a while, your 5K row, pardon me, maybe a 10K run, something like that. You go real long.
Yeah.
Um, but it was always in a very specific direction and for a very specific reason, right?
Hmm.
So like CrossFit programming had this concept of fitness, right? So again, they're looking for this general fitness that would lend itself well. They had to come up with a definition for fitness
Hmm.
because there wasn't one that existed before CrossFit. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. Like,
No, see, it was the state of being fit. Merriam-Webster dictionary. This
right.
fitness is the state of being fit. It's like
Sure.
there's a term for that in it's like an argument type. I forget what it's called. Like a
Is that a straw
something
man
like a
argument?
no, it's like a circular or like it's basically like it defines itself. It doesn't
Oh,
actually
self-referential.
something like that.
Yeah,
There is a term for it, and I don't know what it is, but
right.
it's like yeah, that's what is fitness? State of being fit. How do you get fit? Well, you do some fitness. What's fitness? State of being fit. Like it's one
Right.
of those type deals.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the one. So CrossFit set out to put out an empirical definition of fitness. What is the definition of fitness, Sam? By CrossFit's
Wow.
definition.
Well, so the aim being something that could be quantified, could be measured, right?
Hmm.
So we
Yep.
define fitness as your work capacity across broad time and modal domains. And what we mean when we say that, I don't just mean, your ability to do things, right? I mean very specifically your ability to do work expressed
Hmm.
as a mathematical equation, work being force times
Yep.
distance, right? So your
Hmm.
work capacity, your
Hmm.
ability to do those things across both broad time, meaning in very short 10-second intervals or 5-minute intervals or 10-minute intervals or 1 hour intervals, right?
Yep.
And modal domains.
Yep.
I can do this for a heavy deadlift. I can do this for a max set of pull-ups. I can do this for a combination of a bunch of different
Yep.
things,
Yep.
you know,
All different loading ranges, rep ranges,
the whole shebang.
light, moderate, heavy, high rep, low rep, moderate rep, everything, the
Yes,
whole spectrum.
yes. And so with this very specific definition of fitness, what we see expressed with CrossFit is a program meant to elicit the broadest and greatest adaptation for that very specific definition, right?
Hmm.
And if
Yep.
it didn't move the needle, it wasn't CrossFit and it didn't get included, right?
Right. But I remember, I believe it was Greg Glassman once said, like, anything that's going to lend itself to increasing work capacity, we'll do it. If doing backflips on rollerblades was going to increase your work capacity, then
Mm,
you'd see workouts program with backflips on rollerblades, and we would
yeah,
try and learn how to do it.
yeah,
There's nothing that CrossFitters won't do because we want to increase that work capacity as efficiently as we can.
yes,
So, and another thing is that the breadth and depth of the adaptation
yeah,
is reflective of the breadth and depth of the stimulus.
yes,
So if you have a very limited stimulus, you're going to get a very limited adaptation. So that's
right.
why we try and keep that as broad as we can. We want as broad an adaptation
Hmm.
as we possibly can.
Hmm. Well, and so now that we've kind of outlined why why CrossFit workouts looked the way they work, or look
Hmm.
the way they work, depending on where you are and what you're doing, we understand that it was for a very specific aim, right?
Hmm.
That we want to get you fitter with a very specific definition.
Hmm.
Well, now, fast forward 10 years, right? There is the CrossFit Games. We have world class, amazing athletes who
Hmm.
are pushing the limits of physical capability in ways that we could not imagine 10 years ago,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
for many people, that's the first exposure to
Mhm.
what is, what CrossFit looks like, right?
Mhm.
Um, and there is this kind of divergence from classically defined CrossFit, especially when it
Mhm.
comes to volume and intensity. Um,
Mhm.
the world famous 100 Words of Fitness says very, very clearly, you know,
Mhm.
keep workouts short and intense, right?
Yep.
And the things that we have understood let us know that it's in the best interest of everybody who's involved because we're trying to touch the broadest possible group of people
Mhm.
that to have short and intense workouts, it's in their favor, right?
Yep.
That probably doesn't work for elite level athletes, and appropriately so, wouldn't you say?
Mhm. I mean, the thing, like, I would still argue that it does. It's just if you're wanting to compete at like an elite level, you just need more of that. You just need a higher dose of that. If they're still keeping their workouts short and intense, I don't think there's a
Mhm.
deviation that way. If they're just doing more of that,
Yep.
and that's where you start to like bleed into CrossFit
Mhm.
programming and affiliate.
Mhm.
The strength plus metcon model happened because at the CrossFit Games they started testing strength a little bit more heavily.
Mhm.
Not that they didn't test strength before. I mean, 2008, I believe, at the games, the ranch or the deadlift ladder,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
like the top lift for the males was 505,
Right.
and you're seeing these athletes kind of like clear this deadlift ladder, which is incredible at that time. But now you're starting to see like strength start to make its way into more of the conditioning workouts. You're doing power cleans at 225, you're doing snatches at 185.
Yep.
So because strength started to become a higher um, or more highly tested at that end of the spectrum at the games,
Mhm. Mhm.
then people were like, oh, well, and I mean, the line of logic follows. They're like, oh, well, those guys are really fit
Yep.
and they train strength and conditioning in
Yep.
one day. So
Yep.
if we want to be really fit, we should do the same. It
Right.
The line of logic follows, um, but it's in my mind, and I'm sure in your mind, just a tad bit misguided in that regard, just because those people have different agendas and different things they're trying to do.
Well, I think the question that needs to be asked is, are we having people do CrossFit so that they can get fitter,
Hmm.
defined as better work capacity? Rather, let me say this. Are we having people do what they're doing in the affiliate
Hmm.
in order to serve greater fitness? Or are we having people do what they do in the affiliate to get them better at quote unquote the sport of CrossFit? Right? Because it's kind of
Yep.
it kind of been gamified. Like
Hmm.
like and I love the open. I would never change anything about the open, for example, but I get some people who are so wrapped around open performance as an example, and
Hmm.
they're not doing the things that they need to do at a normal everyday level to take care of their bodies, and they're over prioritizing this kind of pseudo competition type thing that
Hmm.
happens. And I don't know if that question is being asked at all, or I don't think it's
Yep.
being asked often enough, and I don't know how often it's being asked, and it feels like not at all sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. That's a really good question. Is like, it CrossFit for um, health and fitness for that work capacity that we're shooting for versus like
Mhm.
are we getting people better at being fitter, or are we making them fitter, or are we just getting them better at the sport of CrossFit?
Right?
Um, that's a really good question, and I think there is a little bit of some overlap there. I mean, I think we'd
Yes.
be mistaken if we ignored that. I think there is a bit of overlap between CrossFit as a sport and CrossFit as a methodology, and getting people um,
Right.
increasing that work capacity. Um, and it just comes down to like the implementation of it. I know we can go down a whole rabbit hole on like the open and everything
Hmm.
in regards to that, but we'll save that for another day.
Yes.
Um,
No, I think that, and this might be a good place to pause for today because we're 50 minutes in, and give us a good place to kind of ruminate and pick up. And for anybody else who's listening to this or watching this, like ask yourself this same question, like
Hmm.
I know why I do CrossFit, right?
Hmm.
Are you doing what you do in the gym because you're trying to be more capable as a human being, or are you doing what you're doing in the gym so that you can be better at what you do in the gym, right? Like, are you doing thrusters and pull-ups so that your body is more capable across the broadest breadth and depth of, implementation or like experiences or adaptations or whatever, or are you doing thrusters and pull-ups in order to optimize your ability to do thrusters and pull-ups? You know,
Hmm.
and it's
Yep.
and without passing judgment, like that's probably a good question to end on. And we can come back next week and be like, okay, so like, what are the pros and cons?
Yeah.
Like,
Just kind of expand on that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
okay. Well, for anyone who was hoping for an answer to that question, sorry, I guess.
Yeah.
If you stuck around for that long, um, and hopefully when we get together next week, we can give you. I'm gonna make the statement that we're gonna try not to pass judgment, right? We'll give you a
Well, yeah.
broader understanding of like um, the risk reward relationship between
Hmm.
various ways, various reasons for doing what people do inside of the affiliate. How
Yep.
about that?
Yep. And yep, different pros and cons and the spectrum of that for like different implementations of CrossFit
Uh-huh.
methodology and what that might look like. So
Absolutely.
a little bit deeper dive into that. I like
Yeah.
it.
Well, wicked. Well,
Cool.
Kevin, thank you so much for being here as always.
Thank you so much for
And
having me.
yeah, it's my pleasure, and I really enjoy these conversations. So looking forward to doing a little bit of deeper dive next week.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
All right, my friend. Take it easy.
You too.